So I'm originally from New York, and I live now in France for 30 years, so that's why I speak English so well. Thank you, 3D Wire and everyone, Mecal and Creative Media, for inviting me here. It's a really great pleasure, and it's wonderful to be with you. First, before I get started, can you tell me how many of you are currently working in video games? Okay. And how many are in animation? Okay, terrific. And is there anyone who's doing both? Okay, super. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the strengths of narrative, and I think it continues on the conversation that was happening a little earlier on narrative, because narrative is really the center of any film or game, regardless of the game. I mean, my background is video games, and I also work in animation, but regardless of if you're doing a platform game or you're doing an action adventure, narrative is at the heart of that. And I think it's easy to get wound up in the budget or the technology and starting to go looking for things that will make your game or your film better, where in fact it's really at the heart of the narrative. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that can also be a tool for the economics and the budget and the choices that you make. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about these three different projects. The Invisible Hours, which is a VR project that was done at Tequila Works. Now, this game was a murder mystery, a bit like Agatha Christie. I don't know if any of you have seen the game. But this game was really a very good example on how narrative was really at the heart of the experience. The Breadwinner, which is a film, I was a completion guarantor, so that meant that I guaranteed that the film finished on time and on budget. I worked with the team at some moments to make decisions on whether there's a problem in the production and we have to make a choice to spend more money on one thing or another thing. And it's a moment in any production where you have to figure out a way that is not going to punish the project, that the project will benefit from these choices. And a lot of times the project is actually stronger when we have to make these hard decisions. It's not because you have more money that you make a better story. And Breadwinner, I think, is a perfect example of that. It's not the biggest budget, but it's certainly one of the most powerful stories that came out this year. And then Odyssey is in production, and this is an example of a documentary film that is a transmedia project that combines an app, a feature film, and a modern art museum installation. So this combines all of those three. So I'm going to show you just a trail.
Why would one of us want to murder Nikola Tesla? The man was a genius.
I have my suspicions. And I will catch this killer.
I'm Thomas Edison. When your name is up in lights, those are my lights.
If you don't give me what I want, I'll tell everyone the truth about you.
Why would Tesla pay to have a blind assistant?
To keep his secret safe from prying eyes.
She's the most famous stage actress in the world. So she lies for a living.
I'm giving him what he wants most. Another dead son.
Why did you run?
Because I'm a murderer.
Now hear this, all of you! I know you think I'm a fool. No! But I promise you, this will not go unpunished. This will not go unpunished! Stop! If I were to watch you, and you didn't know I was there, what would I see? you'd see the truth. Of course.
So, I want to show just one thing in this, which is at this moment here. Hold on. You see in this section what's happening. That's one scene.
I'm a fool.
That's another scene. So basically what's happening here is that you're seeing different events from things that are happening in the story, but they're happening simultaneously, which means as an audience, you're only seeing one part of the story. So an important thing to know about The Invisible Hours is that it's not a game. It would be very much considered a no game, because as a player, you don't actually change the narrative. The narrative is linear, and it's not a movie either, because as a viewer, you're seeing events. You can do certain things, you can interact, you can pick something up and read it, but you're not actually changing it, because the way that it was written as a spherical narrative. And so, to understand what that means, basically what we have here, I mean, Raul is our creative director and designer at Tequila Works, and Rob Yescombe, he's a writer and a narrative director. They worked together. It was Raul who had the idea he wanted to do something that, in VR would give the opportunity to almost like rear window, a Hitchcock, where you're kind of looking at different pieces of a story, and then together the viewer puts it together and has the full narrative. So you have to imagine that the story actually takes place over 1 hour, and that actually what we created was 5 to 6 hours of footage. But as an audience, you will only see 1 hour at a time, because it's all running in real time. So in fact, what we did was we had these 7 stories that were interwoven. And in each room, different things are happening. These 7 characters are weaving in between each other. So this is all happening inside the mansion. And what I'm going to show you next is a tool that we created to help make decisions on the narrative, to make key decisions in terms of timing. So what this is here is an animatic. And each one of these colored elements, each one of them is a character at different stages, because some of the characters actually transform into a kind of different stage. Not to be giving too much away. But basically what you'll see here, if you're looking, I'm going to move it forward because nothing really happens in the beginning as they come in. So here, you see here, all these are the characters, and each one is in a different room. So here, they're kind of gathering in the main hall. Maybe there's a discussion going on here. And as there's different moments in the story, the characters, here's one here, they're in different places. And what this helped us do was that Rob, when he was writing the script, he was able to time each character with their script. We actually recorded them and we timed them as they went through the animatic. And this became very much of our blueprint to later work with the actors, to time it, to know actually how much time would we have between each actor. So as you look at this, let's see. Whoa. Where's my, there it is. So let me give one here. Now, we're seeing the different characters in different rooms. So each one of these, here's on the ground floor, we've got 2 going on there in the front, near the entrance, then we've got in the back room. So this tool was really key for us. And the story was written with this idea that truth is a matter of perspective. So this logic of truth is a matter of perspective means we are as an audience, following a character, you're getting his perspective. You can decide to follow Edison and just see how Edison is seeing the events happening. You can decide to move from room to room and see all the different characters. So as a viewer, there is no correct way to watch. You're watching it and you're getting information and you're drawing your own conclusions. And it's really only after you've seen a few of the different stories and perspective that you actually can figure out what is actually going on. So the structure of the production, we created that animatic, which was simplistic, but helped us to time it and see how much time we would have, because we didn't want a gameplay experience that would go beyond 1 hour. And then, so we had to cut back. At one point it was getting too big. We cut things back. We even cut a character. We moved things around. Then we started working on the graphic design. We had, just like in a live action film, we did scouting to have physical visuals, and then decided on what kind of stylization we wanted to do. Once all of these were, we did a test with modeling, with body scan, with motion capture of a 2-minute test. And once we did that 2-minute test, we were able to decide on the casting. We had a casting agent, and we're able, if you look at this second group of things, the casting, the rehearsals, the motion capture, that's where a lot of the money is spent in a budget. So you really want to get your first script, animatic, and design well down. You're confident that you're not going to have to start cutting characters when you go into casting, for example. You want to be sure that everything fits together in the timing. You want to be sure that we know what our characters are going to look like. And then in our third stage, we're going to be implementing all the animation, the motion capture. You know, the rehearsal was a huge part. We rehearsed as much time, we gave as much time in rehearsal as we did for motion capture, because that rehearsal saved so much money in motion capture, that the actors were comfortable. We chose actors that were theater actors, more so than motion capture actors. They didn't need to do, you know, we'd say like, you know, body double type work. They were theatrical actors. We were looking to get the emotion. We wanted to feel that you were part of a play. And I'd say that the narrative is very much more similar to theater than any other, more similar to theater than it is to film or to video game. So I'm going to go on to the next project, which is The Breadwinner. As I mentioned, you know, Breadwinner was nominated for an Oscar this year. Angelina Jolie was on the executive production. It was a wonderful project. It was from the team at Cartoon Saloon, who you may know some of their other films like Song of the Sea and Kells. This is a very heart-wrenching story. It comes from a book, which is about a family that is in Afghanistan, and I'll just play you the trailer.
When I was young Parwana, I knew what peace felt like. Stories remain in our hearts even when all else is gone.
My family is in a desperate situation.
Girl, stop when I tell you!
I'm going to find Boba.
No, you're not.
I'm going! There's nothing you can do to stop me!
Maybe if we think of it like a story, huh?
Is it a happy story or a sad story? Just wait and see.
That's a very powerful story. I've always said that I think they can serve tissues with this one. When I saw this, the first time I saw the animatic, first I read the script, and the script was very, very strong. But then when they did the animatic, it was a super interesting transition, because from script to animatic, well, script to storyboards to animatic is where they started to cut back. And they actually did cut a character, and cutting that character made the story stronger. And something that they did, which I think is a perfect example to strengthening the narrative, was that they have the story world and the real world. So if you see on the left there, that's the story world, which is the story that the father is always telling her daughter, and she's able to use that. The director, Nora, was able to use that in a very strategic way, because it adds a sort of fun and light element to a really harsh and very heart-wrenching story. And then there was, in terms of animation, the story world had almost paper cutout. They literally cut paper to move the animation, to give a feeling of paper and paper puppets. And on one side, that makes a huge separation from the real world, which is Parwana, who you attach to and you fall in love with, and the real world drawing. But on another side of it, it adds a huge economical advantage, because the animation and the artwork and the budget for doing this kind of work and the time is much lower than you would have for the real world and the type of emotional animation that you saw in the real world. So that gives a great advantage. It also gives another great advantage is this is a co-production, and they worked with a Canadian studio as well, and a studio in Luxembourg, and that makes for a separation of work as well. So you can have a partner, and they can feel quite free and quite open and creative to designing and working together when you don't have to split and keep a coherence in the way that if they'd done it all in one studio. This was split across multiple studios. So when you look at this background, for example, this is the story world. It's very playful, childlike. And here is the real world characters, which are extremely emotional. There's a strong relationship that's built between the characters, much stronger than you find in the story world. In the story world, there's humor. There's also bright colors. Here in the real world, you can see how the characters stand out from the background. So it's 2D animation. This is using technology to their advantage by layering and researching how they were going to make these characters appear in a rather dark environment, and then using a muted color palette to help focus on the characters. And lighting design, these are some early lighting design aspects. You may have, if anyone's seen, a lot of this was on Cartoon Brew as well. There's an interview with the lead artist. So finding the lighting was really, really important for them, because the real world and feeling that ambiance of what it felt like to be in a war was something that they couldn't actually go and see. So they did a lot of research and created environments and emotion. So now we're going to go to a third project, and this is called Odyssey, which is completely different. Now, Odyssey is a live-action documentary film, and the documentary filmmaker, named Michael Madsen, who's from Copenhagen, and this is the third in a series of documentaries that he's done, and it's a partnership also with the Museum Louisiana in Denmark. So it has an app, an installation, as well as the documentary, all around the same theme, subject, and narrative of can you save mankind? Now, this film that he's he's working on, Michael Madsen. It's like, as I mentioned, it's the third in the series. He, in the trilogy, this Odyssey, the idea of Odyssey is, if today we were to create a spaceship that would be 40 kilometers around, and it's 40 kilometers around, and everyone who gets on this ship is going to go out into space, and it's a generational ship, meaning you'll never come back. You get on the ship, and you go out into space, and the idea and the objective is to find another planet. His question is, if we're doing this to save mankind, what are we saving by doing it? What is mankind? So to get at the essence of what is mankind, are we saving the physical body of people on a ship, or are we saving the spirit of humanity? And his question that he asks the audience is, would you be suited to go? What about you would make a good candidate or a bad candidate? So I'm going to show you one of a trailer, not from Odyssey, but from The Visit, which was a film which he says it documents an event that has never happened, basically. And that's the principle of a lot of the films that he makes. And he's been making films on this subject.
This is a little psychologically overwhelming. Makes me wonder exactly what I'm maybe facing here.
This is a completely unprecedented event. The longer we don't know, the greater the fear of our people.
So we're talking here about a spacecraft with intelligent life.
Did you come here to learn about us? Did you come here knowing about our existence?
The one thing we need are facts.
Are they here to...
We can't cope with the unknowns. We need to understand.
I can feel that my pulse is slightly elevated.
Do we talk about parts of ourselves that we're not very proud of?
There are no rules or procedures.
I've started to doubt what I'm seeing.
Some of our media may call this an invasion.
You're not giving anything back.
This simple question, what does it mean? This simple question, what does it mean?
It's an interrogation.
There is something else with me.
So The Visit is based on this idea that if intelligent life came to our planet, and we actually have agencies at the UN, in London, the Defense Agency, that is trained and paid to deal with if aliens if we ever found out there was life on another planet, or if they ever came. And Michael Madsen decided to go and meet them and ask them, so what are we going to do if they do show up? And that was pretty much the answer was, well, we're going to ask them, why are you here? And his question was, well, how are you going to ask them that question? Are we going to ask them in English? Are we going to ask them with sign language? Are we going to show up with the military? So The Visit is all about, what are we going to do if they come? Odyssey is about, what are we going to do when we go? And there are quite a few projects to go. So I'm working with Michael and a team. The team that's doing the app is a team, they're called, here, I'll put them back up. So that's Step in Books. And they're a studio in Copenhagen. And then the Louisiana Museum of Art. So for the app, the first thing that we started to ask was, okay, if we want to do a kind of questionnaire for people, but we're not really recruiting people for a spaceship, what we really would like is for people to get a feeling of and almost the discomfort of, do I really want to do this, and what is humanity, and what are we preserving? So we're starting out with this idea. Michael Madsen is going to introduce that he's making a documentary, and he's going to introduce that this is the subject, and we'd like to know about you. And we're going to go through this kind of questionnaire where we'll be asking different questions that you can choose A, B, or C, or deciding on where you fit. And ultimately, the goal is that you will end up with a shape, a physical shape that's a unique shape, which is also to give value to the idea that we're each unique, and that this unique presence of who we are and what is being human and our journey, what that means. And the idea of putting the narrative of what are we preserving? What is humanity? And how can we save humanity? How can we save mankind? Always at the center. So the goal is to have this application that'll eventually generate a shape, and that shape will be something that we're going to use in the installation, using the idea that you can have the interaction with Michael Madsen through the installation and the screen, but also to be creating this individual and unique shape that is based on how you answer these questions about yourself. You know, are you somebody who takes charge, or are you somebody who prefers to follow? These type of put into context and situations. So that's Odyssey, which is still in production. The exhibition is in September 2018, so everything is in production at the moment. This is something that we're continually moving between the narrative of the film and the installation and the app, and that they benefit from each other, and hoping that they inspire each other into different things. And that's it. We've gone through all 3 projects